Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And today we are covering a section from the Star Wars archives, 19 episodes 4 through 6, 1977 to 1983, by Paul Duncan, 40th anniversary Toshin edition. This is a very well made, very interesting book that I recommend all Star Wars fans to buy, because it teaches you about George's vision, and it teaches you about how Star Wars should be made, and it teaches you how George Lucas thought up all these amazing ideas that are in our favorite franchise ever. So if you haven't yet, check them out. These are the I guess condensed editions that have nearly the same amount of information as the main editions, which are like $200. This is $25, so I went with the cheaper option, but you should definitely get them and check them out because they're really, really good reads. Anyways, so in this section called A Bigger Plot, George Lucas discusses the Force and Luke's training arc with the Force, and how easy it is to use, and how you can be trained to use it, and how long it takes. It's all covered here in this short little section. So without further ado, I will read this out. George Lucas. Through Empire Strikes Back, Luke is learning to be a Jedi. It's not something that you can just pick up in 10 minutes. The whole idea is it's very hard to learn to be a Jedi. A lot of people get confused about the Force. They see it as some special thing that you can find and pick up and put on your head, and suddenly you have the Force. Whereas it's always been designed so that every human being has the Force. The amount of Force, which is like talent or intelligence, is different in every person. Some of it is inherited, but it's no more than a talent. It's not something you can acquire, it's something you can learn to use. I have the power to lift that cup off the table using the Force, but I can't do it unless I've been trained to do it. It's like a Buddhist monk walking across coals. They can walk across coals and they're able to do it and not have their feet burned. That's real. It's in that mode of you can train your mind, you can train your abilities. The whole point is that if you train yourself, you can actually do something with it. Things that are helpful, like fighting, seeing things before they actually happen, picking up things from a distance. Everybody thinks it's some sort of magic, but it's not. It's something that anybody can do. Luke's born with more talent than a normal person would have. He's got more midichlorians. That's one of those things when there's much more to a story than will probably ever get told. A lot of the people want it to be mystical, but it's not. It's mystical in a way because we don't know about it, so anything we don't know about is mystical. But it's logical, how it all fits together. The midichlorians are like the mitochondria. They're the ones who created the energy that allows cells to divide. And once they divided, we can have multicell animals. And once we have multicell animals, we can create more of the Force, because there's more life and the Force is created out of life. So there you go. That is, I believe, yes, that is the section on the Force and on midichlorians. In the original trilogy book too. So midichlorians are always something he had in mind. I wouldn't say from the very, very, very beginning, but far along the line, I'd say probably by the time of Return of the Jedi, I think he had some sort of, that idea of midichlorians. But obviously this was written and he was interviewed after he finished Revenge of the Sith, I think back in, I don't know when this came out, I think 2018-ish, maybe. But yeah, anyways, that's all explained by George himself, so it's the best information we could possibly have on the Force ever, at all, because he explains how you can't just learn it in 10 minutes, and that you can't just Super Saiyan and level up, super, super fast. and how it's a process and it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of training to be able to use it. You cannot just pull it out of your ass, you know, like you have to put the time in and learn from your mistakes and you will master it. But some people have it better than others. Like Luke had a higher midichlorian count because his father was Anakin. Anakin was the chosen one, so he was able to use it with ease, pretty much. So then you look at a character like Obi-Wan, and his midichlorian count is terrible. Like he almost wasn't even eligible to be a Jedi. But Qui-Gon Jinn was like, no, I'm going to train him anyways, because he has the drive. And Obi-Wan was able to then discipline himself and train himself to the extent he was able to beat the Chosen One in a fight because of how much time he put into learning about the Force and becoming closer with the Force. And that's something that was well established by George too. You know, Obi-Wan is not this masterful, overpowered guy. He's very average in terms of power. He's a very average Jedi and a little under average, you know. So what we see him do is what, you know, we could see any Jedi do. But it's the wisdom and the mind and the heart of Obi-Wan that sets him apart from the others. So I thought that would be interesting to tell you guys about too, because it's relevant. Yeah, and you know, Luke, again, he's always kind of used it. Not to the extent of Anakin when he was a little boy, but he is always, you know, bullseyeing womp rats and, you know, being able to fly ships like with ease without even touching them before. All of that is the Force guiding him, you know. And then, of course, in Empire, things go south. When he doesn't trust in the Force, all things go wrong, which is a good message for any of my fellow Christians out there, is when you stop trusting in God, things go way, way, way south, you know. Hence, the Force is a metaphor for God, etc. Just thought I could connect that there. But yeah, it's a very interesting concept because, like George said, you know, now moving on to something outside of the characters, he had to figure out what the Force is on its own. You know, like, what the heck is it? It's not mystical, right? It's like real. It's there. You know, there's evidence of it, you know, from the midichlorians. There's like all this proof that it's there, but you can't see it. You know, so that's, again, unique and interesting. In pretty much every other form of media, whatever the magical power is, well, a magical power. You know nothing about it. You don't know how people can earn it or use it at all. They just, you know, blast their magical powers and that's it. You know, like, there's no depth. It's just this shallow explanation. Like, let's look at Marvel and look at, you know, Wanda. What the heck is that? She just gets these magical, mystical powers from a lab experiment. Like, and that's all we know, you know? And it's like, well, what the heck is that, man? Then, you know, there's just tons of examples of that. Harry Potter, like, what? You pick up a wand and you can just automatically throw all these ridiculous spells at people? Like, it doesn't make sense. George made the Force make sense, and how you have to learn it and practice it in order for it to, you know, benefit you further. And that's a really good lesson in general, you know, for, you know, religion, is that is true. You can't just walk into one, not do anything, and then expect your life to be completely changed, you know? And George took that concept and applied it to the Force and how that's used, you know, and how you can be ridiculously powerful with it if you devote your life to it. Whether you try to flow with it or bend it, you know, like, for example, on the dark side, which is the bend it side, Palpatine mastered it. And he put everything into learning every aspect about the dark side. Every single piece of information he could find. He spent his life learning how to use it and be able to use it in a way where he could manipulate people and not only just fight people physically, but spiritually and mentally. And that's something no Force user has done, because that's an incredibly daunting thing to do. But he figured it out and he managed to do it. He is ridiculously powerful, but only because he taught himself to do so. And then what does the dark side do? When I say bend, I've talked about this before, but the dark side users, they're not like, let the Force flow through me, flow through me. No, they're like, you're gonna listen to me and I'm gonna bend you to my will. I'm gonna make you do what I want you to do. So it's like the Force choke. That's why it's like this and it's so aggressive. And then the Force push is like whoosh. There's a very distinct difference there, in the main attacks from dark side users, or another great one is, the Jedi mind trick. It's like, these are not the droids you're looking for, compared to, where's the droid? Like Kylo. So that's a good, distinct difference on how it's used in the aggression, and how they're not trying to let the Force, bring them where they need to be. They're like, you're gonna listen. Where the Jedi are like, I'll listen to you. So there's the fundamental difference there. And again, I hate to bring up the sequels ever, but that the mind probe thing is pretty cool. The idea of that is cool, and I'm sure it existed in Legends already. I highly doubt that was something they just made up. And Vader already does it. He reads their minds already, and he does that exact thing. He's just not like torturing them, but he can read. The dark side users, they can read minds. Like Palpatine could feel Luke's every thought and feeling, in the second Death Star, and he was digging through his mind, kind of just how Kylo did it, except he's not, he's so powerful, he doesn't need to, do the whole hand thing and make it this big deal. He can just sit there and do it without having to have a, physical, connection to the Force at all. He can just sit there and use his mind and think it, and he does it. So I guess that's not even a sequel thing, to be honest with you. It's just emphasized in Force Awakens, I guess. But yeah, so I think that's an interesting concept there, on how each side uses it, and how the ways they grow to further themselves on whatever side they're on, and how opposite that is. At the beginning, all the Jedi, they're trying to just look at Luke in Empire, when the saber's in the floor, in the snow, and he's hanging upside down, and how you really see him just reaching and reaching and reaching and reaching. And it's like, at some point, he has to learn to just let the saber come to him. And he does. He breathes, he closes his eyes, he lets go, and you don't see him doing this and this. He just lets it, and it, right? So that's a way you could use it, or you look at the dark side, and how you see Palpatine in Revenge of the Sith, flick the saber from his sleeve, and it's this such aggression and anger just from that one little move, right? Because he's yanking instead of just flowing. So there's the difference, and how the Jedi get less and less and less and less aggressive, and more trust, they trust the Force more and more and more, to where the Sith, are the opposite. They start out, trying to be, a little aggressive with it, but then their masters teach them to be more and more and more aggressive, and they do manipulate the Force to their will, which is incredibly difficult to do, which is why the Sith are so ridiculously powerful, because being able to do that is a very difficult trait to achieve. But yeah, I thought I'd cover that. But, the midichlorian thing, people used to get all weird about that. I know it's not as much that way anymore. It's not really a big deal. It just really is an indicator of the amount of cells in your body that kind of have the power of the Force in them. It's like, it's a cell count. It's not that big of a deal. Like, it's just an indicator to see, how powerful you are. Because if you don't have a lot of those cells in you, you have to... Here, let me phrase myself. So, the Force has to flow through you. You don't just summon it. It doesn't just show up at your hand or float from your mind. It has to be able to transfer through something, which is your body, and it transfers through the midichlorian cells in your body. So the more and more receivers you have, the more and more transmission you have, right? Because you can receive way more of it, but you can expel way more of it at the same time, to where if you don't have as many, then, you receive less, therefore you can only transmit a certain amount. So it's that level. So George kind of found a way to kind of combine, not even, because it's still 1000% like a religion thing, but he found a way to give the science people, something to relate to, I guess, by adding the kind of cell transfer, which is true. You can't just... It makes sense. It's flowing through you, right? Like, it's not... And he said it's not like this mystical thing, right? Like, it's real. And there's these factual things about how, it gets around how it works. So the midichlorians are that, like, final piece to the puzzle, really, on how the Force works. And he says in A New Hope, Obi-Wan's like, it flows throughout, it surrounds us, penetrates us, and binds the galaxy together. Like, that was already something established from the beginning. And really makes the midichlorian thing make sense, because it surrounds us, penetrates us, and binds the galaxy together. It's like this thing holding all of life together in the galaxy, and the universe, I guess. All living things on the universe are bounded together and connected by this thing, which is the Force, and people can learn to use it and manipulate it, use it or manipulate it to their liking, and that's where we have then the dark side and the light side split. The light side's like, I've already went over that, they're like, I'll listen to you, Force, where the dark side is like, you're gonna do what I tell you, Force. They're the opposite ends. But yeah, man, like, look how... And then now I'm gonna do my application section. Let's apply this idea of the Force, which is perfectly explained by George. And I gave you some, reference outside of it and went into it more. Now let's apply this to, let's say, Obi-Wan Kenobi, for example. That show, disastrous show. Or the sequels, too. Like, let's, start off with Obi-Wan. This guy cannot fight Vader at all. Like, he just cannot. He has zero Force abilities. Like, he is cooked because he cut himself off from the Force. Then I forget exactly when he reconnects himself, but at some point he does. And one episode later, he's able to use the Force to the extent of, being able to deflect blaster bolts and hold an entire room, hold the glass of an entire room from bursting in like one episode. And that's like not even the max he goes. Because then we go from there to him being able to sense everything going on in the Star Destroyer. From there, we go to him being able to like pick up every rock on this planet and rip apart these stone structures and like Super Saiyan toss them at Vader. Like, how do you get that powerful in like what is a day and a half in time? Like, that's ridiculous. You can't just do that. It doesn't make sense. There had to have been, if they were gonna go that route, which is still ridiculous and ruins Obi-Wan's arc, then they would have had to really stick with it, and he couldn't just get instant power, where he's like the most powerful being in the galaxy all of a sudden, from going Super Saiyan on Darth Vader, from seeing Leia and his Force visions, which that on its own is ridiculous. Then he's able to see Qui-Gon Jinn. Like, what on earth? It like doesn't make sense. Like, the amount of power you need to see Force ghosts is like, you really have to be connected. And I didn't see that. So that's one example. And Obi-Wan, again, was super, super committed. So he would have been faster than others at reconnecting, and plus he's reconnecting, so it would have gone a lot faster, but not that fast. That was like absurd. So another example of this would be The Force Awakens. That movie had me for a while, not anymore, obviously, but it had me for a while. And the stupid Rey fight is, I think, the most prime example of, non-example of George's philosophy of the Force, because she literally has not used the Force once, other than mind tricking that stormtrooper, which that is ridiculous on its own. So prior to that, she had never touched the Force once in her entire life, and she can go from being able to do a mind trick that fast is not possible, by the way, because that takes a lot of like willpower, and like that's ridiculous. But it took her a few tries. So, when I was younger, I let it slide. B, she was able to just flick up a lightsaber better than Luke in episode 5, when she had never used the Force, touched the Force, nothing, and just flick it right up and right into her hand. And then it gets worse. She's able to defend against a fully trained dark side user who utilizes the dark side to make his blows more impactful and more brutal. That's how Kylo uses the dark side. That's how all Sith do. I know he's not a Sith technically, but still, all dark side users use the dark side to gain more power, and it can be used to gain more physical power as well. And he's bashing Rey, and somehow she has the ability to use the light side power to give her physical strength, and can just block all of it in an instant. And that takes, again, incredible dedication to the Force. I don't know, guys. It's mystical and magical. No, George said it's not, Then she just defeats Kylo. Just wipes him. He's done, and like that fast too. And that's doesn't make sense at all. That's just ridiculous, man. Like, you can't. And then she just closes her eyes and opens them, and somehow then that's her like Super Saiyan, and Obi-Wan had his Super Saiyan. Like, that's not how the Force works, man. You can't. And this is objectivity too. This isn't subjectivity. I'm not saying, well, in your opinion, if you're gonna say this is how the Force works, that's okay. But in my opinion, nah, bro. Like, this is just straight up the truth. George said it himself. You can't just learn it in 10 minutes. Like, this is facts. Facts on how Star Wars works. 1000% fact, by the way. There's zero argument. And if you're arguing, then you're, man, you know what you are. I don't even need to say it. You know what you are. But no, there's no justification for Rey winning that fight. And no, it's not because she was a female. No, that is not why I'm mad about it. It's the fact that the idea of someone never picking up a saber in the Force, or never even using the Force in general, forget not even picking up a lightsaber, which that's a whole nother thing. The fact that she can do that and win just completely contradicts George Lucas's philosophy for Star Wars on every level. And there's zero argument. Zero. There's negative arguments. Because honestly, the second someone even tries to argue, they've already lost, and that already proves to me what they are, and who they are, as a Star Wars fan, instantly. So, the shills, screw it. You are a shill if you try to justify that. And there's no navigating outside. It's just the truth. You are a shill if you are going to try to defend that thing in Force Awakens. Because that was, it is so ridiculous. And it's not that complicated to figure out. Because you've never seen someone be able to just snap the Force like that. Not even the Chosen One. The Chosen One, who is the most powerful Force user ever in the existence of mankind, couldn't use the Force that fast. Then there's no way this random Joe Schmo who's Force sensitive can do it that fast. That's not how the Force works. And no, you can't say, oh, well, there's a different view on a perspective writing The Force Awakens, and they decided to do it this way. No, bro. No. So yeah, that's not how the Force works. You can't just use this franchise however you want to use it. I've gone over that before, and how Dave Filoni just thinks that people can use it however they want, and how that's good for the story. That, seeing little mistakes and dilutions is fun. That's pretty much what he said. And that's early video on the channel. You can go check it out. But, he doesn't know Star Wars anymore, which is unfortunate. But I'm pretty sure he still does, but I think Kathleen Kennedy's trying to brainwash him, but he's fell for Disney's and Kathleen Kennedy's shill train now, and he's just completely out of it. So I'm scared to see what he does next, to be honest with you. I'm terrified, because while he's 2 million, billion, zillion, jillion times better than Leslie Headland, I feel he's walking away from George and he's walking towards Kathy, and that's never a good sign. But yeah, so that's the whole thing. But yeah, The Force Awakens doesn't know how to use the Force. Obi-Wan doesn't know how to use the Force. The Acolyte, they don't know how the Force works either. They just think that it's just illogical, honestly, on how that all plays out. I don't even know. They just can't write Star Wars, because it's hard to know if it's the writing or if it's how they use the Force for a lot of these things. Like the bridge scene with Soul. He easily could have held it's a whole thing. But I think he could have lifted the girls and brought them to safety. Yeah, I don't know, man. But it's then I'm thinking, oh, he could have done both. Because, at this time, Jedi are so powerful, if that's the message she's sending, then he can hold the bridge and lift them at the same time. But, no. That's not... Oh, God, it's just so... That show, how much I hate it. Nothing in that show makes sense. Or the Force Fu thing, like, doesn't really make sense in a lot of ways. And how Indara, she held the what is it, like the knife dagger thing in front of the bartender. She could have sensed that May was going to throw the next one because she's a Jedi and she can see things before they happen, which is embedded in the Force and being a Jedi. That's how they can deflect the blaster bolts, you know? Which, if you didn't know, that's not something anyone can do because it happens too fast, but they can see the path of the blaster bolt before it's fired. So they know exactly where to put their saber at the right time. You know, that's how they're able to deflect blaster bolts. Not everyone can do it. Only Jedi, you know, and Sith and Force users like that. But yeah, so she totally could have sensed that, and she didn't. She just like lets that weird thing just stab her. And I'm like, okay. You know, then we get into the whole weird, you know, made up Disney lore with the like Jedi Master Torben like floating in the air, and he has the Force bubble. Like, I don't even know what the heck he's doing. And then Kamir's helmet, and how if you put it on, like, it can give you more powers and make you more, get you in like, I guess, mute your mind and stuff. Like, what is that? Like, there's all this stuff that they just don't have any clue how to use the Force ever. And how, oh yeah, the whole Jedi Council can't sense the, you know, shadow and deceit and darkness of, you know, these dark side users who are apparently Sith being rampant and killing like 7 of their fellow Jedi. They can't sense that at all. Like, bro. So yeah, you know, Acolyte, Obi-Wan, what was the other one? Force Awakens, you know, Rise of Skywalker, Rey beating Palpatine, the whole idea of Palpatine in the Force essence transfer. Disney has no clue how the Force works. Like, it is horrible, honestly, seeing what the heck they're doing, you know, with the Force in general. Like, forget how horribly written and treated their characters are. Like, they don't know even the general concept of the Force, which I know, and I just explained to you guys. And I know very well, and I know how to write it, you know? And that it's even easier to write than explain, because it's this idea. And once you are locked into this idea, it's natural to write. We're like, okay, this guy, this character, he's gonna have, you know, a really high midichlorian count, but he doesn't exactly have the devotion to being a Jedi, and he's rushed and he doesn't want to learn, so he's not going to be as powerful. But you know, he'll get the easy way out on things sometimes, compared to his friend, who has a lower midichlorian count but is very dedicated, and he's much more powerful than the other friend. But there are some things that the other friend can just do because that friend has a higher midichlorian count. Like, I know how it works, and I know who would win what fight, you know, in terms of my new characters that I'd write, you know, or even, let's say, Anakin versus, who could we put him against? Like Maul. I know who'd win that. Anakin. You know, Maul is not a dedicated Force user anymore. He's just trying to get more and more and more power politically. You know, he's not wanting to get more and more power in the Force and physically. That's not his goal during the Clone Wars. It was in Episode 1, and that would be more of a challenge. But by the time of the Clone Wars, he just wants to rule the galaxy, and that is his goal, you know? So he just uses the power he has, and he doesn't want to grow with it at all. And you know, I think that would be an advantage and edge to Anakin, because I feel Anakin could really just wipe him out in like a second at that point, because Anakin is dedicated and is the chosen one, So that alone is just automatically Maul's gone. You know, I don't think there's even a contest. Yeah, so you can talk to Nick Gillard. He thinks the same. You know, or no, he talked about Dooku versus Maul, but if it's Anakin versus Maul, bro, are you kidding me? Like, no contest at all. But yeah, like I know how this stuff works, guys. Like, I'm not an idiot, you know. I know how to write the Force in my scripts and whatever, and I use elements of it in my non-Star Wars scripts too, and that's something, you know, that some of my friends see when they watch, you know. Well, they will see in I guess what, not a full year, like less than a year, probably 6 months time they will see. But you know, I've shown some friends my scripts and they're like, oh, is that like a little piece of the form? I'm like, yeah. So it's a thing I do. I like to add little bits of, you know, because I love the idea of it. And I don't really even name it or highlight it or even really talk about it. It's just you feel the presence of something there, on things that are totally not even close to Star Wars. So I just love the idea of it, man. And again, it kind of harkens back to God and how George Lucas really said in this book that the Force is a metaphor for God. So, you know, can't debate me on that either. He says it, you know, in that exact way too. So I'm not even paraphrasing. But yeah, I love the idea of it. It's really great. But yeah, so that's the Force explained by George Lucas and summarized, not really summarized, furthered by me, and how I help break it down more. But yeah, that's it. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to check out the Star Wars Archives 4 through 6 and the Star Wars Archives 1 through 3. They will completely change your perspective on Star Wars, as well as the making of Revenge of the Sith, the making of Episode 1, which I have over there, and get the bonus discs for Episodes 1, 2, and 3, and the Star Wars Trilogy bonus material disc for the whole original trilogy, and really break them down, really learn, don't rush, and you'll be very knowledgeable of Star Wars and really, really, really know what's up. So once you do those things, you're set, man. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, share, and hit the bell for notifications when a new video is uploaded. Till the next time, remember, your focus determines your reality. May the Force be with you always.